The training grounds of the Aurelia Space Academy were vast, stretching across kilometers of reinforced terrain and shimmering under the pale light of the twin suns. The air smelled faintly of ozone and metal, a constant reminder of the high-tech environment the cadets called home. Lieutenant Mara Vey walked through the grounds with a quiet confidence, her uniform crisp, her boots clicking lightly against the polished surface. Unlike some of her classmates, she didn't need to announce her presence with words or showy gestures. She moved with purpose, and people noticed. Today was not just any training day. Today, the Academy would introduce a new challenge. One that even seasoned cadets had avoided until now. The instructors had brought in the Aeronox, a genetically engineered predator designed to simulate extreme combat scenarios. The beast was enormous, twice the height of a human, with armored scales and eyes that glowed faintly like molten metal. Its muscles were corded with unnatural strength, and it moved with a speed that defied its size. Mara had heard the rumors. No human had ever survived a direct charge from an Aeronox. Cadets who attempted it often emerged injured, bruised, or shaken. Their pride wounded even more than their bodies. Mara's squad gathered at the edge of the arena, faces pale with nervousness. The instructors outlined the trial with calm detachment, as if discussing a routine drill. The Aeronox will charge at full speed. You must survive, adapt, and, if possible, subdue it. Their words were simple, but the meaning was clear. Many had tried and failed. Survival required more than skill. It required instinct, courage, and perhaps a touch of luck. Mara listened carefully, her mind already racing through possibilities. Her squad whispered among themselves, doubts seeping into their voices. Humans can't survive that impact. One murmured, eyes fixed on the beast in the distance. It's impossible. Mara shook her head slightly, but she didn't speak. Words would not change what was about to happen. Action would. She stepped forward when the instructors signaled the start, her movements calm and deliberate. Around her, the cadets took positions that the training manuals prescribed. But Mara relied on something different. She relied on observation. She studied the Aeronox's movements, its posture, the way it flexed its muscles before a charge. Every living being had a rhythm. She knew. Even one engineered for destruction. The arena trembled as the Aeronox let out a roar that echoed like thunder. Its charge was imminent. Mara's squad froze for a moment, then scattered in various directions, relying on distance and technology to protect them. Mara, however, did not move away. She stood her ground, feet planted firmly, eyes locked on the charging beast. She noted its speed, the angle of its approach, the slight hesitation in its gait. The instructors had said it would be unstoppable, but Mara saw a pattern, a small opening. The Aeronox lunged. Time seemed to slow in that instant. Cadets shrieked and ducked, barely avoiding the creature's massive claws. Mara's body reacted before her mind fully registered the motion. She leapt forward, closing the distance with surprising speed. Her hands reached the beast's thick forelimbs, gripping with all her strength. The Aeronox collided with her, and the impact would have flattened any ordinary human. But Mara twisted her body at the last moment, letting the beast's momentum flow around her rather than through her. Pain shot through her arms and shoulders. But she did not release her grip. For a brief moment, the arena was suspended between chaos and awe. The Aeronox struggled, thrashing violently. But Mara's hold remained steady. She adjusted her stance, leveraging her lower body strength. And with a controlled effort, she forced the massive creature downward. Dust and small debris exploded around them as the Aeronox hit the ground, stunned and unable to continue its charge. Mara's chest heaved, sweat dripping from her brow, but she stood victorious. A human who had done what no one believed possible. The squad watched in stunned silence. A few scrambled forward to assist, their previous fear replaced by admiration and disbelief. The instructors were equally stunned, exchanging glances as if the laws of physics themselves had been momentarily rewritten. Mara did not smile or boast. She simply released her grip and stepped back, allowing the Aeronox to recover slowly. This was not about glory, it was about survival, and proving that humans, often underestimated, could endure what others could not. As the training concluded, Mara's squad gathered around her, their expressions mixed with relief and newfound respect. "How did you do that?" one asked, voice barely above a whisper. Mara shrugged lightly, wiping her hands on her uniform. "You watch, you learn, and you react. You don't rely only on armor or protocol. You rely on yourself." The words were simple, but their meaning was profound. Humans had instincts, ingenuity, and a will to survive that no machine or alien design could predict. The instructors called Mara aside after the exercise. They analyzed the footage, replaying the moment of impact from multiple angles. "Your timing, your control, your adaptability, these are exceptional," one said. "We expected the aeronauts to overpower you. Instead, you used its strength against it. It's remarkable." Mara nodded, keeping her pride in check. Recognition was satisfying, but she knew this was just the beginning. Every encounter, every challenge, would demand the same focus, courage, and quick thinking. Word of her feat spread quickly through the academy. Cadets who had doubted the human capacity for survival now looked at Mara differently. She had shown them that rules could be bent, predictions could be challenged, and limits could be exceeded. Her example ignited a subtle but powerful shift in the cadet body. Humans were more than their physical fragility. They were adaptable, clever, and unyielding. Later, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the arena, Mara sat alone, reviewing the day in her mind. The aeronauts had been formidable, but she had learned something invaluable: understanding your opponent, trusting your instincts, and remaining calm under pressure could turn a deadly situation into a triumph. She knew that in the galaxy beyond Aurelia, threats would be far greater, far more unpredictable. But she was ready. Humanity, she realized, had a strength far deeper than any weapon or armor. Mara's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the twin suns glimmered like molten gold. Somewhere out there, beyond the academy walls, challenges awaited that no human had faced. Aliens, rogue AI, and uncharted planets loomed like distant shadows. But she was not afraid. Humans had a way of surviving against all odds. They adapted. They endured. And when necessary, they triumphed. As the night settled over the training grounds, Mara stood, stretching her tired muscles. Tomorrow would bring a new trial, new expectations, and perhaps new dangers. But today, she had proven one undeniable truth. When everyone says humans cannot survive, sometimes a human can do more than survive, they can conquer. And in that moment, Mara Vey felt the quiet thrill of possibility coursing through her veins. The universe was vast, and humans were often underestimated. But underestimating a human, she thought, could be the gravest mistake of all. The arena was quiet after Mara's feat, but the silence was not comfort, it was anticipation. Word of her victory over the aeronauts had spread like wildfire through the cadet halls. Some whispered with admiration, others with disbelief. But all agreed on one point. Mara Vey had done what no human had been expected to do. Yet, Mara did not feel like a hero. She felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her, heavier than any physical challenge she had faced. The instructors had planned a follow-up trial, more difficult than the first. This time, Mara would face multiple aeronauts simultaneously. The beasts were not just genetically engineered for strength, they were also designed for coordination. Each one could anticipate and adapt to attacks, learning from every failed attempt. For cadets, this was more than training, it was a test of survival, of strategy, and of courage under pressure. Mara arrived at the arena early, studying the setup carefully. The training field was circular, with reinforced walls high enough to contain the beasts, but low enough that their full power was felt in every charge. Sensors and cameras dotted the perimeter, capturing every movement for analysis. Cadets were allowed minimal gear, light armor, gloves for grip, and boots designed for traction. Mara looked over her equipment, considering it but knowing deep down that her greatest asset would not be her tools, it would be herself. Her squad gathered around, some eager, others nervous. "Are you sure about this?" one of them asked quietly. His voice trembled, betraying his fear. "It's impossible to face more than one at a time." Mara smiled faintly, shaking her head. "Impossible doesn't mean we don't try. Watch the creatures, understand their rhythm, and react. That's all you can do." Her calmness seemed to reassure some of the cadets, though others remained doubtful. When the signal sounded, the arena doors opened, and 3 Aeronox beasts entered at once. The ground vibrated under their combined weight, sending small tremors through Mara's boots. The creatures roared, their eyes glowing with feral intensity. Mara's pulse quickened, but her mind remained clear. She analyzed their positions, noting their angles and spacing. The beasts were faster than any cadet could run, but they had a flaw: coordination was possible to disrupt if one could anticipate the moment of imbalance in their charge. The beasts lunged simultaneously. Cadets scattered, some falling or stumbling under the suddenness of the attack. Mara didn't move backward. She waited until the first Aeronox closed the distance, then sidestepped with precision, letting the creature's momentum carry it past her. With a swift grab, she caught the beast's forelimbs, twisting its motion to unbalance it. The first Aeronox crashed to the ground with a thunderous impact. Mara rolled aside, barely avoiding the follow-up strike from the second beast. The arena erupted with chaos. Dust and debris flew as cadets tried to evade the beast's charges. Mara's instincts guided her. She noted the patterns. The first beast, now recovering, tried to rejoin the second, which was focused on her. She used the environment to her advantage, pushing the second Aeronox toward a reinforced barrier. The creature's own momentum caused it to collide with the wall, giving Mara just enough time to pivot and intercept the first again. Sweat streamed down her face. Her muscles burned, but she stayed calm. The key was movement, anticipation, and using the beast's strength against them. No tool, no armor, no gadget could replace instinct. Humans had a unique advantage: the ability to think, adapt, and react in real time. Even when every other variable seemed stacked against them, Mara had already demonstrated it once. Now she was proving it on a larger scale. Cadets watched in awe. Some began to mimic her movements from a distance, trying to apply her strategy to their own evasions. The instructors leaned forward, intrigued. Mara had transformed the trial from a simple test of endurance into a masterclass of human adaptability. One instructor muttered to another, "This is beyond training. She's showing them that instinct and courage matter as much as any protocol or design." The second Aeronox shook itself free from the barrier and charged again. Mara anticipated the moment perfectly. Timing her movement with a fraction of a second's precision, she sidestepped, grabbed the creature's forelimbs mid-motion, and used her own body as leverage to redirect its force. The beast stumbled, almost losing balance, and she twisted, forcing it to the ground beside the first. The 2 beasts struggled, but the arena had confined them enough that their mobility was restricted. Mara had successfully neutralized 2 of the 3 threats without sustaining serious injury. The third Aeronox, larger than the first 2, hesitated. Perhaps it sensed Mara's skill, or perhaps it was analyzing the chaos around it. Either way, Mara didn't wait for the beast to decide. She moved quickly, using her understanding of the other creature's positions to force the third into a misstep. The creature roared, its massive claws striking the ground near her feet, sending vibrations up her legs. Mara jumped aside, grabbing hold of the beast's limb and applying the same principle as before, using its momentum against it. The Aeronox slammed into the ground, exhausted and stunned. Mara stood upright, chest heaving, arms trembling slightly from exertion. She had done it. She had faced 3 Aeronox beasts at once and survived, a feat no human was expected to accomplish. Around her, cadets and instructors alike stared in amazement. Some could barely believe their eyes. Others cheered, though quietly at first, as if afraid the beasts might recover. Mara allowed herself a small nod of acknowledgement, not for glory, but for the lesson she had proven. Humans were not fragile. They were not predictable. They could endure, adapt, and overcome in ways no algorithm or design could anticipate. She had not relied solely on strength or speed, though both were important. She had relied on observation, timing, and the instinctual ability to turn danger into advantage. The arena slowly quieted as the beasts were subdued and returned to their containment pens. Mara's squad approached, their expressions a mixture of relief, awe, and respect. One cadet, who had doubted humans could survive even one Aeronox, looked at her with wide eyes. I don't know how you did that," he admitted. Mara smiled faintly. "You watch, you think, you move. And you don't panic. Fear makes mistakes. Humans survive because they find a way even when the odds are impossible." Instructors called Mara aside once more, reviewing the recordings. They analyzed the angles, the timing, and the subtle adjustments she had made. "Your performance is beyond anything we have seen," one remarked. "You've shown us that humans have a capacity to adapt that even we cannot fully predict. That is remarkable." Mara nodded quietly. She was proud, but her mind was already looking ahead. If 3 Aeronox could be managed, what of the challenges waiting beyond Aurelia's training grounds? Real danger was not controlled, not predictable, and it would require more than instinct alone. After the trial, the cadets returned to their quarters, whispering among themselves. Some began to mimic Mara's techniques in practice, attempting to internalize her lessons. Others studied the footage repeatedly, analyzing her movements, her timing, and her decision-making under extreme pressure. Mara's actions had shifted the culture of the academy subtly, but significantly. Humans were no longer considered fragile or limited. They were resilient, clever, and unpredictable qualities that could tip the balance in the harshest of circumstances. Mara, however, remained focused on improvement rather than celebration. She reviewed the trial in her mind again and again, noting every subtle movement, every moment where the beast's balance had almost overwhelmed her. She knew that survival was not about luck, it was about preparation, understanding, and courage under fire. Each challenge revealed more about her own limits and how far she could push herself. That evening, as she walked across the training grounds with the twin suns dipping below the horizon, Mara reflected on the day. The Aeronox had been powerful, but power alone could be countered with strategy, awareness, and adaptability. Humans, she realized, possessed a combination of qualities that no brute force or machine could replicate. Intelligence, instinct, and courage were as much weapons as any laser or reinforced armor. Tomorrow, there would be another trial. Perhaps it would involve faster, stronger creatures. Perhaps it would involve simulations so complex that few could survive them. But Mara was ready. She had faced what was supposed to be impossible and emerged victorious. She had proven that humans were capable of more than anyone imagined, and she knew that the universe was full of challenges yet unseen. Each one a chance to demonstrate the true power of humanity, to endure, to adapt, and to conquer against all odds. As night settled over the academy, Mara stood alone on the arena's edge, watching the stars appear above. Somewhere out there, threats awaited that no cadet had ever faced. Mara's heart beat steadily, calm but resolute. Humans had survived impossible odds before, and they would continue to do so. She had survived 3 Aeronox beasts today. But the lesson went far beyond that. Survival, adaptation, courage, and ingenuity were qualities no one could predict, yet they defined the human spirit. Mara clenched her fists lightly, feeling the strength within herself and within all humanity. She had faced what others feared, survived what others said was impossible, and learned that true strength was not in size or armor, but in the mind, the body, and the will to act when every option seemed impossible. The universe would challenge humans in ways they could not yet imagine, but Mara knew this. When humans faced the impossible, they did not just survive, they endured, adapted, and triumphed. And in that quiet moment, under the twin suns of Aurelia, Mara understood the truth that would guide her through every trial to come. Humans were never truly fragile. They were extraordinary. The Academy was buzzing with excitement and tension in the days following Mara's astonishing victories. Her name was on everyone's lips, whispered with admiration, awe, and, in some cases, disbelief. Even instructors, who had witnessed countless trials, spoke quietly among themselves about her performance. Mara, however, did not let the attention distract her. She knew that what awaited next would demand more than instinct and courage. It would demand strategy, teamwork, and nerves of steel. The third trial was announced early one morning. Unlike previous challenges, this trial was not confined to the arena. It would take place in a simulated environment, replicating an alien ecosystem, complete with uneven terrain, limited visibility, and unpredictable hazards. The instructors called it the Survival Gauntlet, a test designed to push cadets to the very edge of their abilities. Mara listened carefully as the details were laid out. Multiple Aeronox beasts would be released, along with new environmental factors, rocky cliffs, unstable ground, and areas where visibility was almost zero. Cadets were to navigate the terrain, evade or neutralize the beasts, and reach a designated extraction point within a set time. Mara's squad looked apprehensive. Many had already witnessed her previous feats and wondered if they could keep up. "We've never faced this level of danger before," one cadet said nervously. Mara glanced at them, calm and steady. "We focus on what we can control. Watch, move carefully, communicate, and trust your instincts. That's how humans survive." Her words, simple as they were, had a grounding effect. They prepared themselves as a team, knowing that panic or hesitation could mean disaster. The simulation began. The cadets were dropped into a dense, rocky terrain under the dim glow of artificial sunlight. Shadows stretched across the ground, and jagged rock formations created blind spots where Aeronox could hide. Mara immediately scanned the area, noting the positions where danger was most likely to appear. She led her squad cautiously, signaling hand gestures to maintain formation and awareness. The first Aeronox emerged from behind a rocky outcrop. Its massive body loomed in the shadows, claws scraping the ground. Cadets froze, some instinctively raising their weapons, but Mara had learned from experience that raw reaction alone would not be enough. She moved forward, timing her steps, calculating the best angle of approach. When the beast charged, Mara leapt to intercept, using her strength and momentum to redirect it into a narrow ravine. The Aeronox crashed against the rocks, momentarily stunned, and Mara quickly rolled aside to avoid retaliation. The terrain made movement tricky. Uneven surfaces and loose stones threatened to throw off balance, and visibility was poor. Mara's awareness became her greatest weapon. She instructed her squad to stay low, use the terrain for cover, and anticipate the Aeronox's movements, rather than reacting blindly. When a second beast charged from a hidden crevice, Mara sidestepped with a quick shuffle and grabbed the creature's forelimbs, twisting and forcing it into the ravine beside the first. The two creatures roared in frustration, pinned temporarily by the environment and Mara's calculated control. Her squad watched, inspired and amazed. They began to mimic her approach, using agility and strategy, rather than relying solely on speed or weapons. Mara guided them with calm precision, correcting their positions and encouraging them to anticipate the beast's moves. The simulation, which had terrified many cadets, became a proving ground for human adaptability. But the gauntlet was far from over. Mara knew it would escalate. She signaled her squad forward, leading them toward a narrow canyon. Visibility was reduced to almost nothing as shadows and rock formations obscured the path. From the darkness, a massive Aeronox emerged, larger and faster than any Mara had faced before. Its eyes glowed like embers in the dim light, and its roar shook the canyon walls. Mara froze for a fraction of a second, analyzing the beast's trajectory. Then she acted, timing her movements with precision. She sidestepped the charge, grabbed the beast's forelimbs, and used its own momentum to send it crashing into the canyon wall. Her squad followed her example, moving in sync, using the terrain to their advantage. They began to see what Mara had known all along. Humans were not limited by brute strength or technology. Their instincts, coordination, and creativity allowed them to survive where others might fail. Mara moved like a conductor, orchestrating their actions and turning what seemed impossible into manageable strategy. The third Aeronox, sensing its companion's disadvantage, roared and charged directly at Mara. She measured the distance, gauged its speed, and anticipated its impact. With a swift leap, she grabbed the creature mid-motion, twisting and redirecting it toward a rock formation that confined its movement. The beast struggled, thrashing violently, but Mara held firm, using every ounce of her strength and control. When the creature finally collapsed in exhaustion, she stepped back, breathing steadily. She had survived another encounter that would have crushed any ordinary human. Her squad moved quickly to the extraction point. Having learned from her example, they communicated silently, avoided unnecessary risks, and supported one another when obstacles appeared. Mara kept a watchful eye, ready to intervene if an Aeronox threatened to overwhelm them. When the final extraction beacon came into view, her heart swelled, not with pride, but with satisfaction. Her team had survived. They had adapted. They had proven themselves capable of feats many had deemed impossible. The simulation ended, and the cadets were debriefed. Instructors analyzed their performance, praising Mara's leadership and the squad's coordination. "You have demonstrated what humans are capable of under extreme conditions," one instructor said. "Adaptability, strategy, and instinct are just as important as strength or technology. Today, you have shown the essence of human resilience." Mara nodded quietly, understanding that the lesson extended far beyond the academy walls. Later, in the cadet quarters, Mara reflected on the trial. The Aeronox had been formidable, but it was not invincible. They had weaknesses, patterns, and limitations that could be understood and exploited. Humans, she realized, had a unique combination of traits, intelligence, adaptability, and courage that allowed them to face seemingly insurmountable odds and survive. She thought of the universe beyond Aurelia, of planets uncharted, species unknown, and dangers no simulation could predict. If humans could survive the gauntlet, they could survive far greater challenges. Mara's squad gathered around her, their faces showing exhaustion, relief, and newfound respect. "We couldn't have done it without you," one cadet said, awe evident in his voice. Mara shook her head. "We did it together. Humans survive because they learn, adapt, and support one another. That's our strength." Her words were simple, but they resonated deeply. Humans were stronger together, and even when faced with impossible odds, they could endure. The night settled over the academy, and Mara stood on the balcony of the cadet quarters, looking out at the stars above. She knew that real challenges awaited beyond the training simulations: alien species, unpredictable environments, and conflicts that could test every ounce of human resilience. But she also knew that humans were ready. She had faced creatures designed to be unstoppable, survived impossible impacts, and led her team through situations that seemed hopeless. The Aeronox trials had been more than tests. They were lessons. Humans had instincts, ingenuity, and courage that could not be replicated. No matter the danger, they could adapt and overcome. Mara thought of her fellow cadets, of all the young humans who might one day face threats far beyond the academy. If they learned to trust themselves, to observe and adapt, and to act with precision and courage, they could survive anything. As the night deepened, Mara felt a quiet resolve settle over her. The universe was vast and dangerous, filled with unknown threats and challenges. Yet humans, she realized, possessed a strength far greater than brute force or advanced technology. It was a strength born from intelligence, adaptability, and the will to endure. The Aeronox trials had proven it. But the real tests lay ahead, and Mara, along with all of humanity, would face them not just to survive, but to thrive. She turned back to her quarters, knowing sleep was necessary to prepare for the next day, the next trial, and the next challenge. Humans were resilient, clever, and brave. They could endure, adapt, and triumph where others failed. And Mara Vey had shown, time and again, that even when everyone else said humans could not survive, they could not only survive, they could conquer. The sun rose slowly over the Aurelia Space Academy, painting the training grounds with golden light. The events of the Aeronax trials had transformed the atmosphere in the academy. Cadets no longer whispered doubts about human resilience. They looked at one another with newfound respect, inspired by what Mara Vey had achieved. Even the instructors moved with a quiet energy, reviewing the results of the gauntlet and acknowledging that one human, with courage and ingenuity, had rewritten what was considered possible. Mara woke early that day, muscles sore but mind alert. Today's trial was unlike any before. The instructors called it the final convergence. A comprehensive challenge combining multiple arenax, environmental hazards, and unexpected surprises designed to push cadets to their absolute limits. This trial was not only a test of survival, but a test of leadership, strategy, and the very essence of human adaptability. Mara had prepared herself for hours, reviewing tactics, observing the terrain, and thinking several steps ahead. As she arrived at the arena, her squad gathered around her, eyes filled with anticipation. They had trained, learned, and survived together, and Mara's guidance had been crucial. "We stick together," she told them, voice steady and firm. "We watch, we move, we anticipate. No panic, no mistakes. Humans survive because we adapt. And today, we will show just how strong we can be." Her words carried weight. Cadets, once unsure, now felt a quiet determination settle over them. The arena was massive, larger than anything Mara had faced before. It included steep cliffs, narrow canyons, and open plains scattered with obstacles. The aeronax were released in waves, each one larger and more aggressive than the last. Sensors beeped and flickered, simulating environmental hazards like sudden rock slides, shifting ground, and patches of unstable terrain. The first wave of aeronax charged. Mara's squad moved in formation, staying low and watching for openings. Mara analyzed the beast's behavior instantly. The aeronax coordinated, attempting to corner the cadets. But Mara anticipated their moves. She sidestepped one, grabbed another mid-motion, and used its momentum to redirect it into a narrow ravine. Her squad followed her example, moving in sync, covering one another, and using the environment to their advantage. Mara's calm focus set the tone. Fear had no place here. Only observation, timing, and precision mattered. The second wave was even more intense. Several aeronax emerged from the cliffs, their massive forms blocking multiple paths at once. Cadets stumbled under the initial shock, but Mara remained steady. She shouted instructions, pointing, guiding, and correcting their movements. Her leadership turned chaos into order. The cadets adapted, learning to anticipate the beast's attacks. Moving with coordination that seemed almost instinctive, Mara leapt, grabbed one beast's limbs, twisted, and slammed it into a boulder, just as she had done countless times before. Another cadet followed her lead, replicating the technique under her watchful eye. The terrain itself became a challenge. Sections of ground crumbled, forcing Mara and her squad to jump, climb, and maneuver carefully. Visibility dropped in certain areas as dust and debris filled the air. The final wave of aeronax approached from multiple directions, their roars echoing across the cliffs. Mara's heart raced, but she kept her breathing steady. She knew that panic would be deadly. Humans survived because they adapted, and now, more than ever, adaptation was the key. She positioned herself strategically, drawing the first beast toward her, using its own momentum against it. The creature crashed into a narrow passage, temporarily trapped. Another aeronax lunged at her squad, but Mara intercepted it, twisting and redirecting it with controlled strength. Her movements were precise, every action calculated. Cadets followed her example, moving in harmony, and soon the final wave of beasts was neutralized without anyone sustaining serious injury. The arena fell silent, the echoes of roaring creatures, replaced by the steady breathing of cadets. Mara's squad had survived what seemed impossible, demonstrating not just individual skill, but the collective power of humans working together. Instructors reviewed the simulation data, their faces filled with astonishment. "This is beyond training," one remarked. "Humans have a resilience and adaptability that cannot be fully replicated or predicted. Today, you have proven it once again." Mara nodded quietly, knowing that the lesson went far beyond the arena walls. After the trial, Mara's squad gathered around her. "We couldn't have done it without you," one cadet said earnestly. Mara shook her head. "We did it together. Humans survive because we learn, adapt, and support one another. That's our strength. Never forget it." The cadets nodded, understanding that survival was not only about strength or weapons, but about coordination, observation, and trust. That evening, Mara stood on the edge of the academy's cliff, overlooking the vast expanse of Aurelia's plains and mountains. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. She thought about the universe beyond, about planets unexplored, species unknown, and dangers no simulation could ever predict. The Aeronox trials had been formidable, but the real challenges awaited in the galaxy, far beyond the Academy's walls. Yet Mara was not afraid. Humans had survived impossible odds before, and they would continue to do so. She reflected on the lessons of the trials. Humans were often underestimated. Others believed they were fragile, predictable, and limited in capability. But Mara knew the truth. Humans possessed intelligence, creativity, instinct, and courage, a combination that allowed them to adapt, endure, and triumph against challenges far greater than raw strength could overcome. Each encounter with the Aeronox had proven it. Survival was not about armor or weapons alone. It was about observation, timing, and the will to act when every option seemed impossible. Her thoughts turned to the future. Mara imagined humans venturing into distant star systems, encountering alien species, navigating treacherous environments, and facing threats that no one could foresee. The skills she had honed, the courage she had learned to trust in herself, and the leadership she had exercised would be vital. She knew that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or numbers. It was the spirit of individuals who could adapt, think, and act under pressure. Mara returned to her quarters, feeling a quiet sense of purpose. Her squad members were already sharing their thoughts and reflections, inspired by what they had accomplished together. The sense of camaraderie, trust, and mutual respect was tangible. Humans were capable of extraordinary feats when united, and Mara had guided them through a challenge that no one else could have faced with such effectiveness. Later, in the Academy's debriefing hall, the instructors gathered all the cadets. Mara and her squad were recognized for their performance, but Mara refused personal accolades. "This was not about me," she said. "It was about humans, and what we can do when we work together, when we observe, when we adapt. That is how we survive, and that is how we thrive." Her words resonated deeply with everyone present. Humans had survived and even conquered what was considered impossible, and they now carried a renewed sense of confidence and determination. As night fell over Aurelia, Mara walked through the quiet corridors of the Academy. The stars above shone like distant beacons, reminding her of the vast galaxy awaiting exploration. She thought of the challenges ahead: unknown species, hostile worlds, unpredictable dangers, but she also knew that humans were ready. They had proven themselves against impossible odds, and their ingenuity, courage, and adaptability would carry them further than anyone could imagine. Mara paused and looked out a window at the night sky. Somewhere in the vastness of space, humans would face threats that no simulation could replicate, challenges that would push every skill and every instinct to the limit. But humans had a way of surviving. They adapted. They endured. And when necessary, they triumphed. Mara smiled faintly, feeling a quiet pride in what she had achieved, and in what humanity was capable of. The Aeronox trials had been more than a test of strength or endurance. They had been a lesson in human resilience, creativity, and courage. Mara had led by example, demonstrating that humans could survive and conquer where others might fail. Her squad had learned to trust themselves and one another, gaining skills that would serve them well in the galaxy beyond Aurelia. And Mara knew that this was only the beginning. The universe was vast, filled with unknown challenges and dangers. But humans were never truly fragile. They possessed a unique combination of traits: intelligence, instinct, courage, and adaptability that allowed them to endure, adapt, and thrive. Mara had shown it in the arena, in the gauntlet, and in the final convergence. And the galaxy, when it finally came to witness humanity, would see the same truth. When everyone says humans cannot survive, humans do not just survive, they conquer. As she finally prepared to rest, Mara reflected on the journey so far. Each challenge had tested her, but each had also revealed the extraordinary potential of humanity. The aeronauts had been formidable, but they had been no match for observation, timing, instinct, and courage. Humans were capable of more than anyone had expected, and Mara had proven it not just for herself, but for every cadet, every human, and every being who might one day face impossible odds. The night over Aurelia was calm, the twin moons casting gentle silver light over the academy. Mara lay down, muscles aching, mind alert but content. The lessons of the day, the triumphs, and the victories would stay with her forever. Humanity had survived the impossible, adapted to the unpredictable, and emerged victorious. And somewhere in the vast galaxy, beyond Aurelia, Mara knew that humans would continue to face challenges, survive, and ultimately triumph, proving time and again that their spirit was unbreakable.